Good morning, everybody. Welcome, Jobman community, to another webinar for 2025. This webinar today will be focusing on the first in a new series that will trail into 2026, designed specifically to create a deeper understanding of our software. As always with our webinars, we enjoy bringing out new features, discussing improvements to the software where you can take advantage of those improvements and what else you can utilize the platform in your business to achieve more of your goals. And a big part of that is understanding the background, understanding the areas in which to set these things up, how they interact with each other, and then how you can utilize those background information when coupled with things like the documentation, AI support, and of course your implementation partners to really get the best out of the software. So this is volume one. In this volume, we will be covering through each of the sections of Jobman in great depth. We hope that as part of this process, whether you're an existing user or a new user coming to Jobman, you have an opportunity to really get a really deep foundational understanding of the software and have a really good reference point to be able to come back to if you have new members of your team or you expand your business or you're simply looking to get more out of the platform. You can come back to this series. It will be well documented and publicly available for everybody so that you can find the information easily and utilize it for your business. So today is not the most exciting topic in the world, I will be honest. However, it is core and it's something we get asked a lot via the support system. So this is why I wanted to start with this particular area for the series, and then we can dive into some of the more exciting areas down the track. Most importantly, though, by understanding this area of the platform, when we reference other areas in the terminology, it should now be a little bit clearer for your use case of the software. So if you're joining us today, thank you so very much. Nice and straightforward with this particular webinar. We're going to be diving directly into the software to maximize the amount of time we can spend really hitting this area. And the two areas I want to cover today are getting started and settings. Let's go. Okay, so whether you're an existing user of Jobman, you've been using the platform for a while, you've just come to the platform, or you are looking at starting with the platform, one of the key areas to understand, whilst not that exciting, is of course the settings. Where do each of the areas that we need to go to exist in the platform? Now, one of the great things about Jobman is that often when you are doing things for the first time or improving processes in the software, we don't actually require you to go into the settings. Much of the software is built so that, let's say you're building a new workflow and you want to add a new operation to the software. For example, you can simply jump in and create a new operation on the fly. Or you're adding some contacts and you want to create a new contact type, you can add it on the fly. And in the background, we'll add that to your settings without you even needing to go there. However, to really truly appreciate and understand the depth of the platform and the use cases for a lot of the things we discuss in these videos, I thought it would be remiss if I didn't start with the basic foundation of what these areas are, what they look like, and what they do. So let's dive in. Should be a bit of time today at the end for some questions as well. So if you have some particular questions around some features in the software or something you're setting up and using and you'd like to know more, we should have a great opportunity to dive on that today. So the first thing to cover, really, which sounds very intuitive, but is worth mentioning, is the layout of the Office user design. So the license is made really as much as possible to make your life as easy as possible. So it's designed to follow the process throughout the software if you're using it end to end. Now, one of the tricky parts is if you are a member of an organization, you work with a company that uses Jobman, you might not necessarily have access to every part of the software. So just keep that in the back of your mind. If we're going through some of these settings areas, you may not necessarily have access to them. This is primarily designed for the administrative users and the people setting up the software in the background so that you can do your day-to-day work without having to worry too much about what's going on and how it's working. So the left-hand user menu panel, as we refer to it here, is designed to follow the process of the software. So contacts into leads, leads to generate quotes and item specifications. From those quotes, you can start generating invoices. From an accepted quote, from an accepted lead, you can move that into a job and then use the automation of the platform to handle your scheduling. From the job, you can then access things like job alerts to alert the team when things are happening, going wrong, or need to be modified as part of your process. All of that leads to your scheduling, and use case here being the target calendar and capacity planning. You can then utilize the secondary half of any job flow, which is procurement. One half is measuring your time and ticking off operations. The other half is procurement. So you have your catalog and inventory, all of which is designed to automate your system and make your life a lot easier, which brings into purchase orders, and then of course, finally down to reporting. So the left-hand user menu panel currently looks like this. That is not to say it won't change in the future. We have very dynamic software. We're always improving it week by week. You'll notice that there are releases coming through, which always give you that opportunity to see what's going on and improve and make the software better. So down the bottom, you may or may not have access to these areas, but we're going to focus on them primarily today. Access area number one, which should be available to all members of an organization, whether they be office user or kiosk user, is the help menu. Now, a reason I bring this up is it should be fairly intuitive as to what this does, but for a lot of companies, they often don't know how to reach out for help or where to find the information they're looking for. So I thought it was worth quickly covering the benefit of this particular area. And the three primary benefits to your business are: number one, we have a phenomenal AI built-in tool into the software. That AI, I should say, is linked for your reference to both all of our documentation and our academy. So it has a humongous resource base for which to find answers to the most common questions. Now, to be fair, AI is never going to be as good as a human, and I always provide the caveat when utilizing this tool that if you are looking for deeper understanding, you are probably better off referencing the support team or reaching out to your implementation partner for further training to get better understanding in those areas. But it's pretty good, and the major benefit of it, it's fast and it's live. So you can go in, ask it a question. Obviously, the more details you provide it, the better the response it will give, but it is reading a heck of a lot of documentation, so it has a lot of understanding. I believe recently we did a survey of our AI tool, and it's about 92% accurate, as in it can answer 92% of questions coming through very accurately, and people are able to move on to their day without having to wait for a support ticket to come back. So that's certainly a fantastic tool, and always improving as we improve our documentation. Secondary to that, you can access our documentation at any point. It's live. Many of our documents have videos attached to them. So if you're a visual learner and you want to understand the area, it's not just a page full of reading. You can come in, see what's happening in the software. Most importantly, with all of the documentation provided here, it's live in the platform. So what that means is you can ask it a question, go look at the doc, and the doc will read live in this box, which means you're free to navigate through the software and make the changes while the document's in front of you. Or if you'd like a bigger screen version, you can open it up in full screen and it will open up in a new tab and you can keep working. Third, and potentially most importantly to a lot of people, is how do you reach out to our support team? And that's easy. By clicking on this button, it will allow you to write a support ticket. It goes through to the team, and where we have real people who can actually respond and answer your questions. One great caveat that I'll bring up in the information because it's relevant to how most people use the software is we are currently monitoring quite heavily our AI responses. So don't be surprised if you go down a bit of a chain with the AI and you get to the point where it doesn't quite answer your question because you may have pushed it somewhere where it doesn't quite necessarily have access to the answer. One member of the team may jump in and pick up the conversation and let you know. We want our clients to know that we've got their backs. We're always going to look after them. And this is a big part of the service that's available through the software. And right now it's free. You can access our support team for free. Bear in mind, it is a ticket system, so we follow through the priority of the order the tickets come in, and also we have some prioritization in those tickets as well. For your reference, bug fixes and issues will always be priority number one. So if you find something that's wrong with the software, this is where you can go in and let us know, and we appreciate it. And obviously, we'll do our best to get that fixed up ASAP. Following on from that, the second priority will always be documentation help. So something that isn't quite making sense and you want a quick clarification for, you can reach out to the team. Again, bear in mind if your question is a little bit too extravagant, like you're basically looking for way more information than can be relevant to just a direct email, we will probably recommend you get some training. And that's just so that your time is being utilized at the best rate possible to make sure you get the answers you need without trying to, mix match your way through some lengthy emails. And then the last priority, of course, will be feature requests. We are open to them. We are a fantastic company. You can always communicate with us and let us know where you think we could do things better in the software. It's not to say we'll always action them, and we certainly don't provide timelines. You'll often see a response back from the team saying, thank you so much for your response. We can't give you an ETA, simply because we don't make promises we can't deliver on, but we do listen. Many, many people have noticed that over the last year, certainly, as releases have coming out, that they may have been one of the people who requested some of those upgrades and features. And we think that's a fantastic response from a software company who actually listens to be able to come in. So that's the priority, bugs and issues first, followed by documentation, help and support, and then feature requests. But we will always come back to you, and we certainly do aim to do that as quickly as humanly possible. So that's area number one. Area number two, of course, is kiosk access. So all office users get access to a free kiosk. There isn't a lot of reason for you to want to do that because the software is completely tablet and mobile responsive. It basically means the browser can be adjusted to any device it's being used on. Most people who have office user licenses would simply open up the software in full. It gives you much greater access and you could do much more with it. However, some companies do like to test certain abilities with the kiosk, so it makes sense to give you free access to that so you can test it so your other kiosk users can see that information. And there are a handful of things that some people simply find on the kiosk is easier for mobile when they're out on site, for example. So that's what those two features are for. And then the main feature I want to focus on today, it's not really a feature, but the main core logic that I want to focus on today is the settings area. And whilst I did mention it is not the most exciting topic in the world, it is foundational to understanding the links in the software and where you might need to go to change something. A lot of the support tickets we see are simply because the connection between the document and where to make that change might not just be familiar with that area. So if we can make you familiar with the areas and give you a really good deep understanding, then that will make your life easier moving forward with the software. Similarly, this entire series aims to deep dive into each of the main components of the platform so you can get the absolute best out of your investment. So I'm not going to dive into every small area and show you what it does or how it's designed to do, so on and so forth. The main thing I want to achieve here is to give you an understanding of the area. So I mentioned that one of the great things about today's webinar is I sort of want to cover off on some of those quick getting started tools as well. Things that you may have done already or may not have done yet that will provide instant benefit to the platform. So the first one is the general settings area. The use here is you can enter some really good information that will then allow a lot of the other areas of the software to work. For example, by popping in your logo, now all of your templates will populate with that logo ready to go. In one step, you've basically now added your company logo to all those details, as well as important things like the company email address and website. We can now use that information for all your templating, setting up things like your tax type. In Australia, we refer to it as an ABN. In other countries, you have other names for it, but this is basically where you can put that tax number relevant to your business. So it'll populate on all the templates moving forward. Choose your currency. We have a number of currencies built into the system already, such as British pounds. Most of the dollars that come up, obviously US dollars, Australian dollars, NZ dollars, and there's a few others in there as well. If you don't see your currency in there, please reach out, shoot a support ticket and let us know. And we're more than happy to help it in so that all of the symbols for your invoices, purchase orders, and quotes have the correct currency on there. So that's a nice, easy one to set up. Basic language details, date format for whether or not you're in the US or Australia, on how you prefer to see it. Default time zone will come in from how you set up the software to begin with. However, sometimes people don't select this option. I get it, you're excited, you're moving in and you're starting afresh with the software. So this is an opportunity that if you chose the incorrect time zone to begin with, you can modify it here. Please note, Jobman is an international based software. So quite often we deal with companies that may have their manufacturing in one state or area, and a lot of their staff may operate in a secondary location elsewhere. That's not a problem. What you're setting here is the default for your primary head office, your main company where people will be working, and then the staff can be overridden to their individual time zone. So all that's handled comfortably in the software. And the last one is financial year. This is important because every country in the world generally has a different financial year calendar. Australia, it's July to June. I believe in the US, it's January to December. New Zealand is different, Canada is different, so on and so forth. So setting that here basically overrides the ability for the reporting when it refers to the custom link to financial year. So rather than just default to the Australian financial year, you can set it here and say, well, when we look at last financial year, we refer to our time zone financial year. So setting that here, just allow that reporting to work for you. So that's general settings, nice and easy. The rest of these, fortunately, are quite straightforward. So the good news about a lot of the settings areas in the software themselves is that they really are designed to be fairly typical. We don't make them complicated so that you can generally pretty easily find where things are. But I just want to show you where a few of those links lie so that you can gain benefit from them in the software. Probably the biggest one that most people would look to as part of their getting started is the first thing they want to do is connect Jobman to their accounting platform. So assuming you're a Xero user, MyOb Online user, or a QBO user, this is a great first step in the software. One additional benefit here is when signing up, we ask you for your preferred accounting platform. The reason we do that is Jobman's able to precede most of the information in your account settings to ensure that we've done the heavy lifting. And the reason why that's important is because account codes and things like that can be quite tricky to manage and set up. And they might not make a lot of sense. So we are able to utilize the APIs for the accounting platforms we've built and put the predominance in the settings here. The only thing you should really need to change in this area is anything that's particularly tailored to your business. So for example, you might have a general ledger account code for sales. And if you're a Xero user, that would be 200. So every time you produce a quote or an invoice, you want that going off when we sync up to Xero and placing in the 200 code. So we're going into your general income account. And then you may also break that down a little bit for different types of jobs. So setting up your different account types here will simply allow you then to choose those codes when producing invoicing and make sure Jobman sets the right area. But for the most part, you shouldn't have to touch this area too much. There might be a handful of error messages that come through from the first setup. It's okay. The error messaging is usually pretty good. Pick up what those error messages are, check the docs, make the changes, align them with the way your platform has been customized, and you should be off and running. And then the main area where people do want to interact then is the integration itself. And I just want to quickly show you this bit because it's quite important. When connecting Jobman to your accounting software, you get a few options. We sync and handle contacts, staff, invoicing/bills, so invoicing and purchase ordering, as well as in some countries, if their API allows it, timesheets. That information might not be relevant to your business. For example, you might utilize Xero, but you don't want to use Jobman for your payroll. You simply want to use it for measuring time for reporting and use a different program, such as Deputy or a clock on, clock off program that you've built that specifically goes to your pay system. So you, for example, might not want type sheets ticked on. You don't want Jobman sending that information to Xero because it's not relevant. So simply ticking that off or unticking it, so to speak, hitting save changes before you connect will mean that Jobman will no longer synchronize that information. Something to keep in mind is there is some relevance here. So in order to sync invoicing and purchase order bills, you also need to sync contacts. Jobman needs to have a contact that it can align with when it sends that invoice or bill across. So those two go together, similarly staff and timesheets. Makes fair bit of sense, but worth mentioning just so that you're fully aware. If you have connected, and let's say to begin with, you only want to sync contacts, staff, and invoices, and later on you move to the time and attendance module in Jobman, you can at any point disconnect from your accounting, click update, tick on timesheets, hit save, and reconnect, and you're off and running. So in here, you will find a lot of the other account type settings that you might need to utilize. As I said, as a default, Jobman should work out of the box in your area. So you shouldn't have to make too many changes in here, but that's where you go when we refer to any of the account settings in the software or anything comes up from those error messaging. Activity screens are the ability to see what your teams are working on live. For most companies, they would set up one activity screen, which is show me all my staff. However, if you're a larger business or you're a medium to large business and you would prefer that your operational managers have a little bit more transparency over the different department areas, you can set up multiple activity screens. One of the primary benefits being you might have your lead and estimating team separated from your manufacturing team. Or if you have teams working in different time zones, so you might operate a manufacturing area in Queensland, but your head office is in Victoria, for example, you might separate up different activity screens for that. So this is where you can set those up. And it's important to note that like agenda screens, activity screens are role-based. So you choose who can see those activity screens in your business. If you only want your operational manager seeing them, that's where you can set it up. Only people linked to those activity screens will have visibility to them and be able to move on from there. Similarly, agenda screens, the lifeblood of the software. I refer to these commonly in support as these are really the driving mantra behind Jobman. Jobman produces the operational management and automation. Agenda screens are then the way in which the team actions. It's like the to-do list. And these can be as detailed or as loose as you want them to be. So I'm not going to go into agenda screens today. We'll deep dive and cover on those in further topics, but think of your agenda screens as your operational areas, and then you link your team to those operational areas, and Jobman is continuously providing them the work they need in the priority order you set based on the target dates that need to be done. So you set up one agenda screen for machining, for example, and now every time a job comes through and there's a machining operation that needs to be dealt with, that will then be placed on that screen, and that's how you can get absolute automation from the software. Again, you choose who can see each screen, and I've certainly seen some companies that have gone to the level of almost building personalized agenda screens in the software, which is great. Catalog is probably one of the areas where you will interact with a lot of the settings. So the catalog settings are designed around a couple of key facets in the software. The primary areas here that you would be looking at would be to do with pricing. So this is a big part. Where do I set up my default pricing so that every time I add a material or a product or a labor, what overhead, wastage, and margin do we want to set up? Similarly, categories are then the override for those abilities. So for example, in your materials, you might set wastage up at 5% as a standard for your business. However, when dealing with boards or sheet metals or anything where there's a high level of wastage, you may want to increase that wastage amount, but rely on default overhead and profit. So you can amend that in the category. Brands, colors, finishes, most of these will simply populate as you're adding new data to the system. So what I mean by you don't have to spend a lot of time in the settings, but it's worth understanding those links. The last major link in here, which you will get a lot of use case out of, especially if you are using the quoting facility of Jobman, is styles. Connecting materials, or what we call pricing option schedules or ranges, however you refer to them, to a particular style option is what then allows the superpower of Jobman to say, hey, we only need to build a small commodity of products, and those products can basically give us infinite results. We can change the door type, for example, the hinges or the handles based on a list that we tell the software. It's important to note at this point that everything I'm referring today is documented. The main reason I want to go into these areas is so that if you're reading a document or you've watched a video or you follow this series as like a deep foundational understanding and setup guide to the software, that as I'm referring to areas in the future, you'll be like, yep, cool, I remember. I can go into the settings catalog area and that's where I affect my styles, or that's where I set my default pricing. But all of this is completely documented, so you don't need to feel like you have to remember everything I'm telling you today. One of the second things that most people would set up in the software is then connection to cloud file storage. So one of the first processes we recommend is connect to your accounting so you can start bringing down your contacts using the software. The second process we recommend is connecting out to your cloud file option. Even if you don't have a dedicated cloud file storage solution provider, such as Dropbox, almost every company has these days, certainly has some form of cloud-based provider as part of their setup. So what I mean by that is if you are a Microsoft company and you pay for the subscription for the Microsoft suite, so you have emails and Word and Excel and so on and so forth, as part of that, you have a company OneDrive. You can connect Jobman up to that. You don't need to go buy another solution. Similarly, if you're a Google Suite company, you can connect to Google Drive. You can also connect to SharePoint, Dropbox, and a handful of other really useful areas. The main benefit of the cloud file storage solution management in the software is we will build templated folders in all of your contacts, leads, and jobs. It will allow the team to upload photos via kiosk. It will allow things like the alerts to have photos attached to them, photos attached to item specifications, photos and forms. It's very important that you have a cloud file storage solution connected to Jobman to give you the best of the software. The main reason we don't want to isolate that data and hold it for you is simply because if you ever chose to leave Jobman, and I certainly hope that isn't the case, but if it ever did happen, we don't want you to lose access to all those really important job files, lead files, photos, forms, so on and so forth. It's important you have those stored locally where you're in control of them, and it makes it really easy for you to move things around as well. So 2 points for getting started that make sense. Go into general. Fill out those settings, upload your logo, jump into accounting, connect your accounting service, and then connect your cloud file. And you're a quarter of the way there to getting to use the software. Contacts. So there are most of the contact area you will deal with in the software can be handled on the fly. This is setting up new contact types, different sources. Can be built on the fly as well, so that it's a very important and powerful reporting tool. How do I go in and work out where my marketing spend each year is best benefit? Most of our contacts coming to us from Google or referral or existing clients redoing work with us. Simply setting up a handful of sources can really improve your reporting year on year to understand where your leads and businesses are coming from. And there's one setting feature here that I'll mention because it's not commonly known, I believe, in the software, is that you can impact contact types per role. The use case here is quite specific, but I imagine is worth noting. That's why I wanted to bring it up in the webinar, in that if you have a number of contact types, usually they'll be fairly generic, things like builder, residential or private, and suppliers. You have different supplier types in our system as well, board suppliers, hardware suppliers, so on and so forth. Very customizable, very open. There may be certain types of contacts you don't want particular roles in your business to access. For example, your lead team might have no need to have access to the information around your suppliers. So you can delimit the role for those suppliers, and so they can only be accessed by the estimating team or the purchase ordering team or the procurement team or the accounts team, for example. So super handy little feature, hidden away in the settings, but that's why we're here. Forms and item specifications. This is the area in which you build them. Very, very useful tools in our software. Item specifications specifically is one of the greatest initial return on investment benefits for lead management teams in the software. Ability now to put all that information from your clients, what they're requesting, what they're looking for, what's going to happen as part of that process in one place digitally inside a software that will then follow the life cycle of that job. Saves company hours. And the fact that you can access your role from a tablet has seen a lot of businesses I know who used to go out to site, have the conversation with the clients, make a lot of notes, come back and then spend hours putting it in some sort of form so the team can see it. Now can literally go in, take Jobman out with them, fill out the item specification, hit save, and now all that work is done. And before they even come back to the office, the estimating team can already be utilizing that information to create the estimates or quotes for that job. Really just improves process, buys back time, creates a lot of visibility, make sure mistakes aren't made. Huge return on investment. So forms and item specifications are where you build those. Very straightforward. They're basically question and answer style settings. So you set up groups of questions, you put in answers. Those answer types can be linked to things like images, drop downs, checkboxes, note fields, so on and so forth. Very customizable, very easy to use, very easy to build. And one of the great things about Jobman is we will always, no matter what industry you choose on seating, make sure there's a couple of examples in the software for you. So really gets you moving forward nice and fast. Integrations. This is the area where you can align with your particular CAD. As you'll notice here, I have them all ticked on. One of the great things about the upgrade to CAD in Jobman is you pay once for the organization and you can add as many CAD integrations as you want. This is probably not relevant to a lot of businesses. Most businesses would employ one CAD or another in their company. However, some companies we certainly do speak to have a different design software from the front of house. They want to bring information to quote for fast quoting. For example, Winner Design. They use Winner Design for the estimating team to produce beautiful designs, and they want to create fast quoting. But then when it comes to the actual procurement and job management, they may utilize a more tailored CNC or machine to screen technologies such as cabinet vision or mosaic. So you can see there's a long list of the things we integrate with. We have great relationships with all our partners. There is a large amount of benefit to bringing that particular integration into your software. It is a paid edition. However, for a lot of businesses, it buys a lot of time back. Inventory, very straightforward at the moment. There will probably be more further settings in this area in the future. However, as I said, Jobman tries as much as possible to avoid keeping you in settings. We really want you just to use the software and get moving forward. One of the key areas in here, however, is purchase order statuses. So if you have ever wondered how to be able to modify and customize some of your purchase order statuses to make more sense for your business, that's where you can do it. And there's some good tailored information in there that can utilize a bit of automation, especially if you connect our software out via the API to things like Zapier for further benefits. So status is very powerful in our system, and it's super useful to understand and know where those settings are. Jobs and leads, very similar in their settings outlook. However, there's a couple of key steps in each of them, which probably are worth noting. For the most part, your software will come predefined with a lot of this information set up, so you don't need to touch it. But this is where you can go to make some changes so that you can customize for your business. One of the keys there is alert statuses and alert types. Building different alert types in the system really helps the team navigate when things go wrong, and certainly helps your production management team view those changes and isolate those areas where improvements can be made so that less mistakes happen, for example, and we can really move forward with that continuous level of improvement in the business. Member types is extremely important. Setting up your staff member types is a phenomenal hack in our system to allow you to quickly and easily assign a member type to a job or lead, assign a staff member, and then have all of the relevant operations in that workflow immediately assigned to them. It's like a one-click hack for the system. So definitely worth checking out and utilizing. Similarly, details is an area whereby you can custom build basically anything that you need that's relevant to your business in the software. So a common use case example I could recommend here would be a lot of companies like to measure sheets as well as time when manufacturing. It's a really good output mantra for working out their scheduling. So this is the way in which you can go in, create a job detail. The benefit of job and lead details is they will now become customized columns. So you can open up more columns in your job screen. They are also now available in the reporting. So you can open them up and, if you want to run a job report, for example, and see all of the sheets relevant to all the jobs. So that helps you with your scheduling processes. All of that can be handled and seen here, and they're fully customizable. You can build what you like. Really open, flexible system from that point. I believe we add one into the system to begin with just to get you going. So those are pretty straightforward. Operations and statuses. This is where you can view all of the operations and statuses relevant to jobs or in leads area leads. As I said, most of these will be pre-built in the software for you, and then it's just a matter of customizing. On that note, one of the things I highly recommend is if you are new to Jobman or you're going through the initial process, perhaps with an implementation partner and getting the software set up, is it's always best to modify rather than delete. And I know that sounds very strange, but the reason being is a lot of these key areas in the settings align with other areas. For example, setting up your statuses here will allow you to have additional statuses available for your workflows. Setting up your operations will allow the tasks to be aligned to those operations in the workflow management. They also link out to your products in the system so that you can gain automation of scheduling. And don't worry, I will deep dive into all these areas in more detail in this series, so you get a really good understanding. But what I mean by that is if we've got an operation pre-built in the system for you called assembly, and you don't refer to it as assembly, you call it assemble or something else, rather than delete it and have to rebuild those links elsewhere, simply modify the name of assembly to whatever you prefer to call it, and then maybe add an additional operation if needed. And now the software is going to still work out of the box and get you moving forward. So customization is often better referred to rather than building. And it's one of the benefits of Jobman. We can get you moving forward much faster than typical ERPs because you don't have to spend hours of your life pre-building a lot of the settings. We've done the hard yards for you. The last two there that are very important are types. Job types and lead types are an extreme superpower in the software. So job types is the ability to tell the platform, based on this type of work or this lead type, What operations do you want to bring into the workflow? And the primary benefit there being is it means you don't have to build hundreds of workflows in our system. You can build one or just a couple of workflows, and then you can choose to utilize the types to bring those operations in and out very quickly and easily. And they can be updated live. So if a job changes or a lead type changes, it can be changed, the operations update from there. So really useful. I recommend checking those out. And of course, the new variation statuses, custom build your variation statuses. Make sure you've got at least one approved status and a default status, but you can build as many as you want. And this will help in your areas when utilizing variations throughout the software and making sure that you're seeing the information as you want to see it. Anywhere we refer to statuses in the software, we're referring to information and automation. The idea behind a status is that when every operation or component of that status is ticked off, the software automatically moves into the new status. For example, if you've got a bunch of machining tasks and they all get ticked off, we automatically want the workflow to move into the next status of assembly or QA or whatever your process might be, deburring, cleaning, sanding, finishing, so on and so forth. That's the power of Jobman, that automation. Tick off those tasks, system automatically updates. Everyone can see you're in the new status. We can see that information and move forward. So jobs and leads, very similar. Labour centres are then the final link there to make sure that the intuit capacity handling of Jobman works. So when we refer to labour centres, we're really referring to capacity, letting the system know how many staff you have available in each area so that when we are scheduling tasks and jobs and leads, we're not overkilling the team. It's one of the great benefits of the platform is you can set up, for example, your installation team. You might have 3 installers. They all work 10 hours a day. Therefore, we can tell Jobman we have a labour centre that is 3 persons at 10 hours. We have 30 hours of total capacity, which can be broken down into 3 segments because of 3 available staff. And it's very flexible and customizable in here for the labour centres. So you can have differing work days. Your assembly team might be 5 persons normally, but on Thursday, 2 go to tech or trade or TAFE, depending on what you refer to it in your country. So we want only 3 available slots on Thursday, and maybe we all work a short day Friday. Also, automatically removing public holidays and weekends means that Jobman will never put tasks in there. The last most important bit about this area, which is useful mentioning before Christmas, is this is where you build capacity adjustments. So this is where you can go into each of those labour centres and say we're closed from the 15th of December to the 15th of January. Do not schedule any jobs during that time for us, please, Jobman. So super useful. Settings, labour centres, ready to go. Leads I don't need to touch on. They're very similar to jobs in their configuration. Locations. This is only relevant to businesses that have multiple locations set up for their business. Not a common use case, but there are a handful of businesses who may control 2 manufacturing arms inside Jobman, and the locations where they wish to receive stock could be completely different. So they need inventory management at multiple locations. That's where you can set these up. By default, you will have one primary location built in the software. You can update the name, change the details, and let the software know where you are so that every time you produce a purchase order, it will automatically make sure those things are sent to the right location. And yes, for those of you who have seen some of the fantastic marketing from this year, we're one of the first companies in the world to produce an ability to read a WinStore. For those of you who don't know what a WinStore is, it's a storage solution machine. BSE has one, that's the WinStore, and several other companies do as well. We produced the first integration where we can set that up as a location and we can live read that information so that your entire front-end management team know how many boards are sitting in that setting, that area of your business. So really powerful, really exciting, lots more work will come out there in the future. So stay tuned. Operations is just a shortcut if you don't want to go specifically into lead or job operations. I recommend reaching those settings from that particular area because it makes more sense. However, there's a shortcut here if you want to come directly in. And then quoting is again focused primarily on the settings behind building your statuses. We will build some key default statuses into the system for you, such as created or draft, sent to customer, and then accepted. Those are the 3 core default settings you really want. But again, this can be customized for your business. If there's more visibility you'd like, this is where you can do it. And one of the big use cases for the quoting area in the settings is building presets. It's a phenomenal hack. No matter how you quote in our system, and I absolutely want to bring this point up in this webinar. Jobman has an extremely powerful quoting system. It is designed to bring massive automation and profit-driven margins to your quoting. However, you can absolutely quote in our system pretty much any way you want to. If you are a company that just goes in and you're used to using a really simplified program, for example, like Tradeify, where there's no smarts behind anything, it's just, basically line items, add some labor, add some materials, add some services. Off you go. That's it. That's how you quote. You can do that in Jobman with still gaining the benefit of being able to dive in and use those labor operations then to control your scheduling, all automated in one process. Have your materials linked to SKUs rather than pricing options, and those materials will pull directly from the quote in the lead to the job and sort out your procurement in one step. There's lots of different ways you can quote in our system, and presets are the foundational key here. Once you've worked out the best way to operate with your quoting in our system, and we certainly do recommend you look at the way we quote. For a lot of companies, they want to move towards that mantra because it provides a huge amount of benefit to their business moving forward, and I'll be doing some deep dives on this. Then building presets to quickly handle that information is basically the speed hack. It's like creating mini Excel sheets inside Jobman to speed up your quoting. Staff, there are not too many things you will need to deal with here. However, this is one of the primary areas for dealing with two very big concerns in the software. Number one is roles. So roles is how you define what your users within their license types can see, touch, and do. So for example, office users, you may want to have different roles for procurement, estimating, and job management. Your job management team, for example, might not even need to see leads and quotes and invoices. You don't even want them seeing it. You just want them to be able to handle jobs and procurement. So utilizing roles is how we delimit what people can see, touch, and do in the software. So very important. Public holiday groups, by default, this will come with the public holiday group linked to your area where you sign up. But again, if you have multiple factories or multiple offices, you may want to set up more of these. One of the big ones in here, though, is pay rates. So for companies looking to utilize and benefit our time and attendance module, then this is where you go in to set up your awards, link them to start times, finish times, create breaks, so on and so forth. Lots of great documentation on how to achieve that. All of that is tucked away nice and neatly in the staff settings area. One of the key secondary benefits to the software right now is we allow two-factor authentication in the software. This is a very big concern for a lot of companies currently. If anyone watches the news, you know that the world is always having some form of tech issues out there. It's the more you can do to secure your data and the safety of your team, the better. This is one of the few settings in the area of Jobman that are universal. So this is on or off. You choose as an organization whether you want it on. If it is on, your team will have to set up some form of two-factor authentication and move forward. If you're not that worried about it, we don't make you do it. However, as a company that works deeply in encryption and protection of software management for our clients, I could not recommend more strongly having that system turned on. Nice and easy, set the process up, get your team involved, and then off and running. Excuse me. Supplier integrations. So this is another one of those phenomenal upgrades to our platform. Again, we do not give it to you by base because it's not relevant to every business. However, this is a growing part of our software and is, again, a world first. We've been able to utilize our API to connect out to certain suppliers to allow for some phenomenal benefits to business. One of the primary ones being end-to-end one-touch purchase ordering. It goes directly from Jobman to the back end of that supplier's ordering system, where it can automatically come back and update Jobman's purchase order with fantastic information such as ETD, when we expect these things to arrive, any pricing changes that have happened, update the purchase order to make sure that's correct. So the bill comes through, it's all automated, absolutely phenomenal. Right now we have two live supplier integrations, Hafele and Wilson and Bradley. The Hafele integration has an added benefit of sync technology, and we expect that to come through shortly to Wilson and Bradley as well. Laminex is not a full integration yet. However, it's a freebie. So it is one that you can come in here. All you need to do is connect the Laminex integration to the Laminex contact if you're a Laminex buyer in your software, and basically you can now export a specialized CSV, which can be sucked directly into Laminex ordering system. It's like phase one of our integrations. If you are a company that utilizes Hafele or Wilson Bradley in Australia, highly recommend getting involved in those integrations. They will save your team hundreds of hours of your life, as well as keeping information live, stop ordering. The mitigation return on investment there is absolutely massive. Couple more to go, and we're looking pretty good. Templates. So this is one of the key areas of the platform where Jobman really goes a little bit above and beyond what a typical software provides to their clients. We essentially have a HTML templating system for virtually every PDF, printable, or emailable area of the software, and even areas that aren't, such as notifications and that. So in here, don't worry if you're not comfortable with HTML and you don't want to use ChatGPT and all that sort of stuff. It's okay. We produce a large array of really nicely formatted templates for your business. So we have several options for your quoting. We have a nice purchase order template, invoicing template, target calendar templates. We've done most of the work for you. Some companies, however, really want to go in and customize the heck out of their templating. And why not? This is your system that speaks to your clients and has that interaction fascia. This is the area in which you can do it. Caveat, the HTML we use is extremely powerful. And the reason we've built it that way is so that you have basically an open world capability to do anything you like with our templating. We use CSS Liquid, happy to say that online, so that if anyone's engaging with someone to help them set this up, they know what they're looking at. It is super powerful, super easy. No, I shouldn't say super easy. Super powerful, super easy if you know what you're doing with it to create magic looking templates with virtually unlimited options. The downside being is it is a development based code. So it is something where you'll either need to have had training in or understanding. We recommend you reach out to a third party if that's not something you're comfortable with, or if you're pretty cluey like most people these days. I know nothing about HTML, but I can use AI tools such as ChatGPT, or I find Claude particularly useful here. Copy in some of the HTML, let it know what you want it to do, and generally speaking, within a couple of prompts, it will be able to give you the information you want. Quick note, future reference here is we do plan on releasing some form of WYSIWYG editor for companies that don't need high-grade customizable templates. They just want to make some simple changes to the templates we have. That is on the cards. We expect that to be out in the future. We're very excited by that precept. But right now, we've built the best open world system on the market for your ability to customize templates. Yep, a little bit technical, but you can do anything you like with them, which is absolutely phenomenal. Webhooks, don't worry too much about those. However, if you are a developer and you're watching this webinar, or you've been referred by one of our clients to do some information relevant to building some third-party integrations with Jobman, webhooks are an absolute must for a modern software platform. They basically allow a system to send information off when certain events happen, which means you don't have to continuously poll our system to find information. It's a modern way of building a open API. We're certainly on top of it. We have those built in, nothing for you to worry about on a general day-to-day basis, but something that may be relevant to your business if you have an existing platform that you want to connect and you are talking to a third-party development team, for example, HubSpot to Jobman. The fact that we have webhooks connected to our API will be a big selling point for that development team. It makes their life a million times easier. The last one, and probably one of the few areas in the settings where you may spend a little bit of time, certainly to begin with, and then also as a continuous level of improvement, is of course workflows. So workflows are the bread and butter driving force of Jobman. Everything in our system is designed around automation and transparency. So setting up your workflows correctly so that you can ensure that tasks are being done when they should be done, in the order they're meant to be done, to achieve the target date that you want to achieve so that you can get paid, is very, very important. They're foundational to the software. Again, at default, we will give you a couple of workflows to begin in the system so you don't have to start from scratch and have nothing to work with. I hate that about software platforms. You buy them and you're like, oh, I want to test this thing and get into it. And then you've got to spend like 3 weeks setting stuff up before you can even figure out how to use it. With Jobman, we give that information, we let you start, and then the idea is customize. And workflows is, again, one of those great areas where I recommend, even if the workflow management we have built isn't relevant to your business or not that relevant, we still recommend copying it and then editing and modifying and playing. And everything's very simple. You can drop and drag, change names, very customizable. You can make many if you want, or a few, and then use job types and lead types to really circumnavigate that information. But copy one of the originals. So always keep the original there so you've got a default backup. So you don't end up with, you might start building the workflow and then stuff it up and delete it. If you modify the original, you've got to start from scratch. So one of the cool things you can do is just copy one of the default templates we have built for you, look at that workflow, start making changes, modify things, update things, move things around, add things, remove things, really make it suit your business. And then the reason why I mentioned this is an area of continuous improvement is because workflow management is an area of continuous improvement. It is part of your business that will continue to grow and evolve and change. When you first start with the platform, one of the things a lot of people do, and I'm totally for it, is they actually cull our workflow down. They copy it and they change the name and then they remove a lot of it and simplify it so they can just get using the software. Focus on the key operations you want to be done. For example, lead flow could be as simple as client spoken to, item specifications filled out, estimate sent, quote accepted, default deposit invoice sent, job won, and then an option for job lost. Easy, very straightforward workflow. You don't have to use our system in a complicated manner, much like the quoting. We have an extremely powerful quoting platform. You don't have to do that. You can start by just throwing materials and services and labor at it and getting benefit from that automation without going into the deep world of understanding of that full benefit. Don't get me wrong, once you build it and you use it, it will create phenomenal upside to your business. But to begin with, you can just keep it simple. Workflows are the same. Keep them simple. And then as you start running those workflows, it will in fact be your team who will now have the advantage of visibility and structure, who will come back and say, hey, we've run these 5 leads or jobs and no one's following up with them. We're sort of missing out on that opportunity here. There's a bunch of leads in here with attached quotes where we could be following up these clients, picking up some more work and putting dollars in the bank. And you're like, awesome, let's put a process in, lead workflow, and make sure that there's a follow-up process now that happens. Bang, in it goes to the workflow. Every new lead moving forward uses that workflow. You've improved your process, potentially brought hundreds of thousands of dollars more back into your business from that one process change. And then without really overcomplicating the system, allowed the team to then really interact and get the best out of the platform. So that's why I mentioned this is an area you will probably come back to because it is like a living addition in the software. Is utilize the workflow management, improve on it, continues to improve until you've honed it to the point where you're really happy that you have pretty much everything covered and no processes are being missed and everything is good and the team is always on target. And basically Jobman is then now running your company for you and you can step back and go, on holiday or work on the business rather than in the business. Whatever your outcomes you're looking for from this platform, workflow management is the key. And the other cool thing to mention in here is this is also where you set up triggers. So triggers are a powerful automation in our software when certain target dates for operations are either due, completed, or overdue. You can have things fire in the system. They can be internal, as in notifications, or they can be emails, which can go internally as well, I guess, but also externally. This is how you can build marketing automation, job automation. Very simple, good example of a trigger would be when a quote is accepted and that's ticked off in our lead flow, quickly fire a notification to our accounts team and say, please send deposit invoice. That way you're not even worrying about them waiting to look at their agenda screen to see the task pop up. We let them know, they grab it, they send the invoice, you get paid, you move on. Very simple example of how you can use triggers and automation in our system, but very, very powerful. And that's settings. So I think that was, or I certainly hope that that was definitely worth doing so that you get a really good understanding of the touch points for each of these areas. What this now means is that I can move forward with this series and start to really dive heavily into each of the areas of the platform. And that is certainly my aim, is I really want to give everyone the opportunity for at no cost to come to our YouTube and get a deep foundational understanding of the software so that when they reach out, when you reach out to an implementation partner or a team that's going to help you get this software operational, you will have a really good solid understanding yourself, which will streamline that process. Or if you're making improvements in the future or new releases come out and new features come into the software, you have the capacity and capability to be able to know where to make those changes. And as boring as they are, they are foundational in understanding to the facets of the software that you want to change and utilize. So hopefully you found some benefit from this. As I said, this will be a new webinar series listed into our YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed, please find it and subscribe. It's absolutely worth doing. We put a lot of information in there. We're constantly providing as much free education as we can. So it's worth being subscribed to and being notified when new videos come in. In between this webinar series, we will also continue our deep dive series. So as new major features and releases and usability cases come out, I will continue to share them with everybody so you can get benefit from it and get a good understanding of what those new features are and how you can use them, and most importantly, how you can set them up. But hopefully you get a lot of benefit from this series and the ability to really deeply understand what this platform can do for your business. It's enough gas bagging from me. I hope you have enjoyed today's session. I know it's a busy time of year. Please have a wonderful week. We have 2 more webinars left in the year. There's one in a fortnight and one in a fortnight like after that. So if you have not yet subscribed to the webinar series, make sure you jump on, just so even if you can't make it live, you'll at least be notified that it's available, and you know that the video will come up shortly thereafter for you to watch. If you do have a couple of questions, they don't necessarily have to be relevant to settings. We do have a few minutes left. So if you'd like to jump down to the bottom of your Zoom bar now and ask those questions, I've got a few minutes to cover those off. Otherwise, if you've got everything you need out of today, have a phenomenal week, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.